4 followers.
Like the 4 horsemen.
Eric, don't join them.
Whatever it is you think you saw in me, I buried it with my family.
Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin.
I'm Laura.
And this is our spoiler talk for X-Men Apocalypse. X-Men. So, spoilers ahead. That goes without saying. It's a spoiler talk.
Yes.
There's lots of spoilers.
We're going to talk about the movie.
If you want to do the spoiler free, that video is posted. You can check that out. If you don't mind spoilers, or you saw the movie already,
yes.
We're just going to spoil the thing right now. So I thought this movie was super fun. Like, I don't feel like it reached Captain America Civil War level, which I gave that movie 5 stars because I just really loved Captain America Civil War. I don't feel like Apocalypse quite reached that. But I thought it was extremely good.
I like the new series of X-Men movies. I haven't read any X-Men comic books, so I don't know what's ruined or not ruined. But I enjoyed it for the way that it was different than the 3 that came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting because, like I said in my spoiler-free, like, I was curious. So, you know, Wolverine goes back in time. He changes everything, and I was just curious as to what changed. Like, how much of the original movies is the same, how much of the original movies is different, and I was really excited to see this movie, to see this brand new timeline get set up. Yeah. Now, the one thing I was kind of looking for at the beginning of this movie was, I was kind of wondering if there was something in the change in timelines that triggered the awakening of Apocalypse, because I feel like he wasn't a part of the original timeline. Like,
yeah, I don't feel like he was either.
Yeah, like there was no talk of a weird blue mutant that devastated Egypt and other places in the 80s and things like that. And then the Wolverine Origins movie, which this Apocalypse movie takes place in the exact same time. So when we're watching the Wolverine Origin movie before they changed all this timeline, like, you know, there was nothing about this big old blue guy. So it makes me think he was not part of the original timeline. So I was kind of looking for that. I was like, okay, so what triggers Apocalypse to wake up? What's different in this time that he wakes up? And if there was something different, it was so subtle, I didn't even see it in the movie.
Basically, it opens up the movie with what happened back 600 BCE. And basically, it shows how Apocalypse gets his powers. He kind of goes on an altar type of a thing where basically he goes on it with another person and he transfers all of his powers in his body to this other mutant's body.
Well, his consciousness, because his body withers away while his
because it's old.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's going to this other body. And so it's opening with a mutant that can heal itself on the altar and him on his way to transfer into that body. And so some of the Egyptians that aren't fans of this guy who's claiming to be a god try to stop it. And his 4 people around him protect him. And it also, so basically he gets buried under this pyramid that he built to himself, and so therefore he was underneath it for hundreds of thousands of years, and only now was he released because all the sunlight and all that stuff was in the right place, yada yada yada.
And something I thought that was kind of interesting about the character Apocalypse in this movie was like you said, he thinks he's a god.
Yeah.
And he just keeps on proclaiming that he's a god, and he just tries to. And I love how it opens with James McAvoy doing a little voiceover like almost all of them do. And he's talking about how mutants really are just like other human beings, stumbling in the dark. One has a gift of prophecy, but they're scared of the future. Mm-hmm. Another one has something, but they're scared of this. Or someone has ultimate power and they believe they're a god. And you see that play out because he thinks he's a god. Mm-hmm. And then when he wakes up in our modern world, well, the 1980s modern world, and he sees nations and flags and laws and all those things.
Cars, TVs, posters.
He starts calling the system a system of false gods. Like, he calls that whole system false gods and him the true god. And so he wants to wipe out the whole system and start everything over. And
therefore, there's only one power, not superpowers.
Yes.
Which, because each nation thought they were a superpower with their nuclear weapons.
Which is so interesting to me, as the Bible says, the meek shall inherit the earth. And you're seeing that with the character of Charles, and you're seeing that with the X-Men, that they want to protect those without power. But then you have Apocalypse, who is the exact flip opposite of that, and he's like, what? Those who have power are ruled by those who are weak? And so it's like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, this dude's like an antichrist, because he's just, I mean, he's manipulative, he's charismatic, and I don't mean like that, you know, crazy charismatic. I mean that calm, cool charisma that makes him attractive to follow.
Part of the movie that I thought was interesting is they kind of showed a little bit about Magneto's not backstory, but what he was going through during this 10 years between the last movie and this movie. And it was really, you know, you see him working in a metal factory, and you sit there and you go, what is he doing? And he's actually working, and then he gets in a car and he drives home. He's married, he has a kid. The kid has special abilities, can talk to animals and things like this.
That's so cool.
And so what happens is when Apocalypse comes back, there's like kind of a tremor throughout the world, and something in the metal factory happens and it's about to kill somebody. He stops it with his powers and he moves it aside, and then he goes home and he starts to pack up, and he tells his wife, we need to go. He's like, they saw it. I'm like the enemy of the world because of what he did 10 years ago. But when he was running or getting ready to run and packing passports, he looks at his wife. He's like, I told you who I was on our first date. And so it showed that he could be honest. It showed that he could love. It showed that he could become a new person. He could become the good that Charles has always seen in him and that he was striving for, which was really cool. Unfortunately, they told the police. The people at the metal farm told the police. And
metal farm. I like that. The metal farm.
The metal farm. I don't know what else to call it. And the police show up with no badges. They take his daughter out of the house because they know he won't run without his daughter. And they come out and they're holding her. And he's like, all right, you can take me. Just save her. And it's like, let her go back to her mother. And so his daughter, who, as I said, can talk to animals, did not like that her dad was being taken away, and started like freaking out and said, they are not going to take you away from me. And she started calling the like animals, the birds, in to start attacking the people. It was
epic.
Unfortunately, one of the police officers had his
bow and arrow
ready to go. And on an archery field, they tell you never to hold it because you might let it go at the wrong time.
That's what this guy did.
And he killed the mother and the daughter at the same time with one arrow, which in turn made Magneto take his daughter's necklace and kill everybody because he's tried the good. Maybe he's supposed to be bad.
Which led to one of my favorite Magneto moments where he falls to his knees in the woods and he's holding his wife and daughter. And Michael Fassbender, dude, good job, man. Holy
haven't seen anything
cow.
I haven't liked, Jen.
That was amazing performance. Anyway, he's holding his wife and daughter and just crying. And after he kills the police officer, it's like he's looking up to God like, is this who I am? Is this what I'm supposed to be? Because it's like every time he tries to be good, all the good, it feels like, gets stripped from him. And so
he just deals with a lot of pain and suffering.
It was just a moment where it's like, oh, Magneto, I feel so bad for you. I get it. I know why you want to blow up the Earth. I get it. Don't blow up the Earth, but I get why you want to. It was a powerful moment.
Yeah, so what he does then is he accepts the darkness and he goes to the metal factory to go kill or metal farm, that's what I'm calling it, to go kill everybody. And as he's about to kill everybody, Apocalypse shows up with 3 of his followers saying, you're supposed to come with me. I'm here for you. And he's like, no, don't stop me from killing them. And Apocalypse just looks at him. His eyes go white. And everybody just sinks into the floor and dies.
You know, like in the trailer where his eyes turn white and it just looks like everybody falls over?
Sucks them in!
No! They do not fall over! He sucks them into the earth!
Yeah, and so what's even worse is they're still breathing and the earth is collapsing on them. So they're basically dying, being buried alive, but stuck in cement so they can't get out.
But this leads to my first favorite Magneto moment in this movie. Takes him back to the concentration camp from the first ever X-Men movie where, you know, his mother gets killed and all that stuff. Takes him back there. And right there, he teaches him how powerful he is. So he's already got Storm, Angel, and Psylocke. But what's interesting is he actually used his power to enhance their power. But I don't think he did that with Magneto. He instead put his hand on the earth and says, The earth is made of metal. Reach deep and see how deep you can go. And you see it in the trailer where it looks like the wind is blowing and he's like, "Ah!" I mean, it's like right there.
He completely obliterates the concentration
Oh
camp.
my gosh. It's like he reaches into the Earth's magnetic field. I didn't know Magneto could be that powerful. He was awesome.
Apocalypse is sharing with everybody what they're going to be doing and what the plan is and what he's trying to do. And at that time, Raven came back to Charles because she found out through a back channel that Magneto's wife and child had been killed, and she felt that they needed to do something and intervene and get him back to safety. And so they go into Cerebro. Cerebro, did I say that right?
Yeah, that is right. Cerebro.
Okay. It's a weird word. And they go into Cerebro and
Cerebro.
bro. They go into Cerebro and they start searching for Magneto. And so he finds Magneto and he starts having a psychic link with him. And while he's doing that, he didn't realize Magneto wasn't facing, he was facing a wall. So Magneto turns around and Charles
away
goes,
from the other guys.
oh my gosh, he's not alone. Apocalypse now goes through Magneto and's like, oh, that's what I need. I need somebody who can touch everyone. And so he takes over Charles's mind. And that's when you see in the trailer that I've never seen power like this before.
And yet he used Charles's mind as kind of an amplifier, and Cerebro got into everybody else's mind and disarmed every nation on Earth. It was...
Nuclear weapons in the air.
I'm telling you, it was like...
all of them fired at once. Like, they can't control Charles. They can't get him to take Cerebro off.
Well, they lost Cerebro.
Apocalypse is in charge.
Yeah, he somehow even got charge over the mechanical thing, which was just incredible. The extent of the power of Apocalypse, the way he just took it over. But what was fascinating was that just wasn't the end of it. I mean, Havoc then destroys that entire Cerebro, and so, you know... So what does Apocalypse do? He just teleports there with his 4 horsemen and kidnaps Charles because he's like, oh, look at this.
Yeah.
As long as I got Charles, I got this key into everywhere. And you find out later in the movie, he's just like, I've gained so many powers, but I've never had the power to be everywhere and to be anyone. And you give that to me.
And he's like, that's the last power I need.
Oh my goodness. Like, so he had his 4 horsemen, but he wanted to take over Charles's body the way he took over others in the past.
Basically, he takes him back to Egypt. And like we talked about at the beginning, the like, did I call it a sacrifice table or something like those lines where they were both laying there. And so they were trying to do, but luckily during that time when Apocalypse was using Charles as a psychic link, he told the one and only Sansa Stark, Phoenix, Jean Grey. And because she's the only other telepath, and he sends her a secret message while he's broadcasting this other message. And so she knows where they are, so the X-Men assemble and they go to fight.
One of my favorite scenes, though, in this whole movie. So, Havoc accidentally blows up the castle, which is actually the death of Havoc.
I know.
Which we then find out Havoc is the older brother of Cyclops. Other X-Men fans might have already known that. I didn't know that.
I don't know if it's real or not.
It was horrible when he died.
In this movie.
It was horrible. Anyway, right at the time the castle blows up, everything goes into slow motion, and Quicksilver just happens to be showing up at the castle. Why? Because Magneto's his father, Magneto's on the loose, and he wants to meet his father.
He has Charles's card from the last movie.
And he didn't know Magneto was his father 10 years ago when he met, but now he knows, and now he wants to introduce himself as his son. So he shows up at the castle to get this information right when it's blowing up, which is the coolest Quicksilver sequence ever. To hear Sweet Dreams and have him running around in slow motion. I feel like in this one you get more of a concept of how fast he is than in the other one. Because when the whole castle is exploding and he gets every single student out, you know he's moving fast. And it was amazing the way they showed it, the way he wrapped up some people in blankets, the way he had time to mess up one kid's hair, then save him. And, so he's goofing around. He has time to goof around and save their lives. And, the sequence was amazing. But then one of the things that was cool that they did with Quicksilver, Quicksilver knows Magneto's his father. Magneto doesn't know Quicksilver is his son. Magneto lost a wife and daughter, and he is in pain. And so one of the main things about this becomes Quicksilver has his own plot, his own mission, his own objective, and that is to get to Magneto and tell him, you're my dad. But what was amazing was, like, you get to the end of this movie, and you have Mystique, you have Quicksilver, they're approaching the magnetic field that is surrounding Magneto while everybody else is trying to fight Apocalypse and the other Horsemen. And when Quicksilver has his moment to say, "You're my dad," you know, because they're talking about family, and Mystique is like, "You still have family to fight for. You still have those who love you." And Quicksilver's like, "Yes, and I'm here for..." And he has this moment where he gets choked up, and I was rooting for him to say, "And you're my dad." I was like, just say it. But he doesn't.
He says, "My family."
It was one of those moments that the way they played it up, the way they brought it back up in jokes that Magneto was his dad,
What?
Him and my mom, they did.
No, I know.
the way you kind of just saw that's the reason he's there, Magneto's his dad, and then you get to that moment, it was just so flippin' powerful. This was another cool thing about the change in timelines. And the original timeline, you have Patrick Stewart who blocked off Jean's mind
Yes.
so that the Phoenix was a buried personality. And then in this movie, like, Charles enters into Apocalypse's mind because Apocalypse made a connection trying to take over his body, but they saved him. And through a series of unfortunate events, now James McAvoy's like, I can use that against him. And he burrows into Apocalypse's mind, and they have this huge, epic mental battle. But he's losing. Like,
Apocalypse is way stronger
Professor
than he
X
is.
cannot win this battle. And then he just says, "Jean, help me!" And then he tells Jean, "Unlock it all. Drop everything." And I think it also was the promise that he made on the airplane with Wolverine in Days of Future Past, where Wolverine
Yes,
says, "Bring the X-Men together, remember these names," and Jean was one of those names. I think there's something about that changed his kind of trust level.
I think because of this event that happened, he will not lock up the Phoenix. He will just work with her to learn how to harness it and use it for good.
And it was really interesting when the Phoenix came out, because first she entered the dreamscape that Charles was in, fighting with Apocalypse, and, you know, she literally obliterated that dreamscape and defeated Apocalypse there. Like, apparently Apocalypse has nothing on her. Like,
Yeah.
he just is...
Jean is just that strong.
Oh, and then she came out, and all the flames came out in that Phoenix shape, and it was like, oh! Even Apocalypse, in that moment before he died, like, his last words were, "All has been unveiled," which is awesome, because that's what Apocalypse literally means, like a revelation and unveiling. And that's what he's like. He's like, it has all been revealed. And so Jean just absolutely obliterates him. And that's what I mean by we get to see a lot of these X-Men's full potential, on top of a whole Wolverine cameo.
I was just thinking that we hadn't talked about
No, we
that
haven't.
yet.
How could we not have talked about the Wolverine cameo?
So some of the young X-Men get locked up by Stryker, and they find out where they are because the house blew up. They jumped onto the plane and kept themselves hidden, and so they were in this field trying to figure out how to save their friend so that they could go and get Professor X out of Egypt and, you know, finish the movie. And so they're there, and they kind of get cornered into a room, and there's this big titanium box of some sort, and so they kind of hide behind it, and they're like, "Oh, that must be an animal." And she's looking, and she's like, "Well, no." She's like, it's part animal, but there's man in there."
But she says there was something taken from him.
Yeah, and so she opened it up, and basically he took out the entire base for them.
Oh, yes.
So that they didn't have to figure out how to save their friends, because
It's
he
kind
took
of
care of
weird.
it.
Because, you know, in the original timeline, we watch him get tied down and the needle's all in his bodies and he gets injected with the stuff, which I'm sure happened. But obviously something changed on this timeline.
Yes.
Because this was after that procedure, and apparently he didn't escape, and he was locked in the titanium box. So I don't know what changed there.
Yeah, in the Wolverine Origin movie, he escapes at that time.
Yeah, and in the flashbacks in X2, you see the same thing.
Yeah, and so that's where it was kind of weird, but he didn't have his memory, so they somehow
And he had this weird
taken
halo
his
thing on.
Oh yeah, they had something on. I think that was to help erase his memory.
That's right.
At the end, she goes up and she tells him he can trust her, and since he hears her in his head, he kind of stops, and so she takes off the headpiece, he pulls off the other things, and she touches the side of his face, and then he kind of looks at her, looks at the other two people with her, and then he takes off. And basically she gave him his name back.
Yeah.
And she gave him like a couple of memories that she could unlock to try to help him move on into the future.
Which is a great setup as to why he will be in love with her when we get back to the early 2000s and he
because
finally...
he'll have a vision of her.
Yeah, because he can remember her from that time and her unlocking that. So that was to me, that was just super smart. I just want to know what changed that he didn't escape this time like he did last time. I really enjoyed this movie. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I had a lot of fun with it. Was not Civil War level to me. Fell just a little short, but it was really good.
I really did enjoy this movie, but I'm only going to give it 3.5 stars. I liked it, but it's not something I am cynical, but it's not something I'm rushing back to the theaters to go see. He might,
Yeah.
but I'll go see something else probably.
If you could have any X-Men power, which one would you want to have? I want to be Quicksilver. I mean, after watching that, I want to be Quicksilver.
I don't know which X-Men has it. I just want teleportation powers. That would be sweet.
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, yeah, but he can only go if he's seen it. I want to be able just to go.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
I would like that.
So which X-Men power would you want to have? Let us know in the comments. I'm Durbin.
I'm Laura.
Thank you so much for checking out Durbania.